Dun, 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 citation quiz. Citation haiku. Please cite your sources. Give them credit that is due, or they will be blue. Here we go. Citation quiz. Some important points before we get to the quiz yourself part. Introducing a quote. When you introduce a quote, you need to start off with some sort of introduction. In this example, she states is the introduction, comma, quotation mark, capital letter. This is so important and poetically written that it should be quoted directly, end quote, and the author in parentheses and the period at the end. Shortening a quote. Sometimes you may find that a quote is very long and you need part of it but not all of it. You can remove part from the middle of the quote and replace that part with the ellipses, which is the 3 dots. Of course, you don't put them in parentheses. I just put them here to show what ellipses are. But don't use ellipses at the beginning or end of a quotation. You can start and end wherever you like. And lastly, punctuation. The period at the end of the sentence goes on the outside of the parentheses. Example, she says, comma, quotation mark, I love snow, quotation mark, parentheses, Carabelle, parentheses, period. The period is on the outside. So here's an example of a citation that is correct. Nigel exclaimed, comma, while I was reading my novel and balancing my math book on my head, I ate string cheese. Shepherd 201, period. That is correct. It says there is an introduction, Nigel exclaimed, there's a comma, quotation marks, there's an author's last name, and there's a page number, though we don't always have a page number, and then the period is at the very end. Number 1, correct or incorrect. Quotation marks, ellipses. The narrator explains, comma, she ate a lot of strawberries in Puerto Rico and began to turn red all over. Quotation marks, Brazier 17, period. Well, you might think that this is correct because it has an introduction, the narrator explains, it has capital letters with she, and it has the last name and the page number and the period on the outside. However, it's incorrect because it begins with the ellipses. We can't ever start with the ellipses. Number 2, correct or incorrect. The student exclaimed, I love markers and Subway and school lunches and homework. Sherman 17. Incorrect. Dun dun dun. There are no quotation marks, and there should be a period at the end of the parentheses. Number 3. On page 19, Garcia explains, people should not do math in English class. While this one might seem correct because it has an introduction, and it has a quotation, and it has a period, it's actually incorrect. You should not mention the page number in the introduction to the quote. That should always go after. You don't really need to know that. It's not that important. It goes at the end in parentheses. Also, the P in people should be capitalized. Always capitalized when you're beginning a complete sentence that you've already introduced. Again, always capitalize when you begin a complete sentence that is quoted. Number 4, correct or incorrect. The author muses, comma, she who talks too much in class will meet a grave fate, ellipses, McMahon 48. Well, once again, this is incorrect. The author muses is a nice introduction. The S in she is capitalized. There's a last name, a page number, and the period is on the outside of the parentheses. However, there is an ellipses at the end, which is incorrect. Ellipses can never be at the end. Number 5. In a moment of sheer desperation, as a result of cold air infiltrating the classroom, the teacher leapt out the second-floor window. How 98. Well, finally, this is correct. Of course, there is no introduction to the quote, as there should be, but Everything about it is correct, and the citation is correct. Number 6. Once upon a time, said Adichie, author of The Thing Around Your Neck, people ate a lot of mangoes in Nigeria. 34, period. Well, again, correct. Once upon a time is the beginning. The O in once is capitalized. There's a sort of an interlude or an in-between part where the quote is split up. So the introduction to the quote, instead of being at the beginning, is in the middle, which is said Adichie, who's the author of The Thing Around Your Neck, which is italicized because it's a book. The P in people is lowercase because it's a continuation of the sentence that already started. And the page number is in parentheses. We don't need her last name in the parentheses because it's mentioned up here as well. Number 7. In The Kite Runner, Khaled Hosseini wrote, comma, I like to fly kites in the sky, but I don't like to say bye. 49, period. Yes, again, this is correct. There's an introduction. Of course, the quote is made up and a little silly. And one interesting thing to note here, the word bye is in single quotes. That's because it's something that is meant to stand apart, but you can't use the double quotes because they're already double quotation marks. That would be kind of silly to have that many quotation marks. So if there's a word or a phrase that's emphasized or is being used as a word or referred to as a word, put that in single quotes within the double quotes. Number 8. In Coelho's 4th book, the protagonist's manifest discuss, I am so tired of science homework that I want to vomit. 90, period. Well, correct. This one has an introduction, although the introduction is a little bit different. It starts with a colon instead of a comma. This is a more sophisticated way to introduce a quote, as long as the quote is a complete sentence. There's a page number at the end, in parentheses, and we don't need the author's last name because the author is already mentioned in the introduction to the quote. Number 9. He said, comma, quotation marks, I can't wait to take another test, ... which is ellipses. It brings joy to my soul, quotation marks, the model student, 85, period. Well, this one might seem like it's correct because it has an introduction, it uses an ellipses in the middle, which is correct. It has the page number and the period is on the outside of the parentheses. However, the title of the book is here. How do we know it's a book? It's in italics. If it's a book, it has an author, and so we need the author's last name here, not the title of the book. One exception is that if this were an article from the web, you could put the article title if there was no author, but then of course you wouldn't have a page number because it would be from the web. Last one, number 10. The protagonist revealed her courage when she exclaimed, comma, I will do whatever I can to prevent you from eating mystery meat or doing homework, exclamation point, quotation marks, linear 63, period. Well, the last one is correct. There's an introduction to the quote. There's a comma before the quotation begins. There's the whole quotation. This one has an exclamation point, which is fine. That's part of the meaning of the quote, so it stays there. There's the author's last name, the page number, and the period on the outside of the parentheses. And that concludes the quotation practice quiz. The end.